how we classify costs in cost and management accounting. Right, so first we've got cost classification by relation to the cost center. Remember, cost center, this is where the manager of that center or department tabulates the costs. Okay, it's a part of the business where costs are incurred, basically. Like a factory is a good cost center. Okay, so we've got direct and indirect costs. A direct cost is a cost that is easily traceable or is part of a finished product. Okay, a direct cost is a cost that is easily traceable or is part of a finished product. All right, like direct materials. If you're a company producing chairs, the direct materials will be the wood, the glue, the nails, any fabric that you use to put on the chairs. That is direct material, because that is part of the finished product. Okay, or you can easily trace that to the finished product. The wood, you can easily trace it. The fabric, you can easily trace it. Okay, then you've also got direct labor, the people who are actually making those chairs, what they're getting paid. That is the direct labor. So together, direct labors and direct material, these form what is called the prime cost. When you hear prime cost, just remember direct materials and the direct labor. Then we've now got indirect costs. These are costs that are not easily traceable to a finished product, but they are needed for business operations. So for example, at that chair factory, the rent, that is an indirect cost. The building is needed for the operations to produce the chairs, but you cannot easily trace the rent in the chairs. Okay? The water bill, the accountant's salaries, all right, those are indirect costs. Okay, so let me just admit somebody here. Yeah, so here are some examples of indirect costs or overheads. Whenever you hear overheads, just remember these are indirect costs, right? Factory rent, electricity, the manager's salary. All right, those are the indirect costs. They cannot be easily traced to the finished product, but they're part of the business operations. Then when you hear this word conversion costs, okay, just basically where you're converting a raw material into a finished product. So it includes the direct labor and any manufacturing overheads. Next, we're going to do cost classification by function. Okay, you've got production costs or manufacturing costs. These are tied to the factory. Okay, you've got administration costs, research and development, selling and distribution. These four here, admin, research and development, selling and distribution, these you can put them together as what is called period costs. Okay, you can just look at this diagram here. Okay, production costs or manufacturing costs, they're the ones that happen in the factory. All right, then period costs, all right, they're the ones that are incurred in the offices, okay, where the paperwork is done, where production is not being done. Okay, and as you can see, these period costs, selling expenses, admin expenses, those are the period costs. So just remember how to differentiate those two. Production costs attached to the factory, period costs attached to the offices when production is not taking place. Okay. And some of the production costs, again, you see direct materials, direct labor, and any manufacturing overheads. The manufacturing overheads can be the factory rent, the salaries of the cleaners. All right. Yes. Okay. I'm going to go to the next type of costs. Classification by time. Okay, so a historical cost is a cost which you incurred in the past. You paid for it and you incurred it in the past. Right? Then you've got predetermined costs. Okay, you've got standard and estimated costs. So a standard cost, think of it as a benchmark. All right, for you to compare with your actual results. Okay, it's more like a benchmark for comparison to see, did you spend more or did you spend less? Okay, so standard costs, companies, they always have their standard costs. They'll say, okay, to produce this product, these are the costs we expect to incur. These are the standard costs. Right? Then, when the end of the year or end of the period comes, you're going to say, okay, how much did I actually spend? You compare it against the standard cost. So think of standard cost as a benchmark to compare against. And then we've got estimated costs, costs which you predict that you incur in the future. You estimate. Then we've got sunk costs, money that are spent and cannot be recovered and can't affect future decisions. Then you've got relevant costs. Okay, future costs that change based on decisions. All right, whenever you want to make a decision, these are the costs you're going to take into account and say, okay, if I do this, I'm going to incur these costs. How much profit will I make? If I don't do this, how much cost will I incur? That is what relevant costs are.